Hello and welcome to Irish Esports Collegiate Series for the Spring 2025 series here. It's our first round of Rocket League. We are going to be covering TUS Dragons, who is Samurai Warrior, XXLCXX, and Darhar22, against QUB Leftovers, who is Foolish Feller, Boehner, and MacNutt. Couple of players that we've seen play in previous seasons, semesters, I should say. But yeah, definitely going to be very exciting to get the ball rolling on this new spring season for Irish Collegiate. Zep joins me here today. And how are you feeling, Zep?
Feeling absolutely terrific, and really looking forward to getting into these games, seeing what these teams can bring. It's a new season, it's a fresh start for all of these college campuses, and it'll just be very interesting, fascinating to see if you could say who will come out on top at the end of it all. And I've often talked before about the beginning of the season. It is your chance to make mistakes, but you also don't want to go into making mistakes. You want to go in, be trying to play your game, start off strong, sort of instill fear into the opposition, everyone else that is around you throughout the course of the season. But also, when I would say you have room to make mistakes, it is just one of those places where, okay, if there's any point where we're going to try a play, if there's any point where someone else is going to try maybe a different role, the pace at which they play in the rotation, whether or not they're super offensive or sort of defensive and play for that counterattack. If there's any time where you're going to trial that stuff, it's now. So I'm really excited to see how these teams fare out and what they decide to bring to the table here in this first week.
Yeah, definitely. Like you're saying, it's the first week, you can try and use those plays, see what works against opponents, kind of feel them out a little bit more, because you may come up against them later on throughout the semester. So definitely now is the time to try out new things rather than waiting till later in the season, and then you're stuck trying things that don't work and you're missing out on opportunities closer to the end of the 8 rounds that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get things trialed and you want to see if it's going to work. And also, in trialing it, it's not only whether or not it works, it's whether or not you can make it work, right? Which could also be a very difficult game to play, because ultimately as well, it is based on the opposition you're playing. I mean, you can sometimes fall into the pitfalls of, hey, we tried something this game, it worked out really well, and not really fully taking into account who you were playing against and maybe their inability, shall we say, of being able to expose you and expose your weaknesses, right? So when you're trying to learn these plays, when you're trying to figure out something that'll make you more of a, shall we say, well-rounded player, you do always have to be aware of sort of who you're playing against, what sort of moment it is. And even if they were a good team, sort of be realistic and see what kind of game it was. Do you feel like you were playing the opposition when they were on a pretty good day, right? I mean, there's just so many variables that come into play in regards to sort of adopting that strategy of instilling variety at the beginning of a season. But I might put you a little bit on the spot here. I mean, I don't know. It might be a bad thing to put you on the spot, but I think that you would know. You might have a better idea of these players compared to I would. As we get into this game, is there anyone that you were looking at in particular, or any team you're looking at in particular, that could provide some real danger throughout the course of the season?
For specifics on players, I'm going to be looking at Boehner. He was part of the Queen's team last season and definitely had a good run for himself. So going to be keeping an eye on him throughout this semester of games. Samurai Warrior, again, another player we saw last semester. So definitely somebody to kind of watch out for throughout this series. He's made big improvements. I saw him play at a LAN over on Saturday, so definitely has some tricks up his sleeve. Definitely going to be for this matchup specifically, it's going to be very well-rounded. I think both of these teams kind of sit within that same skill level, so it's going to be an interesting one to see who takes this best of 5.
100%. And as 1 minute is gone in this game one, it is all even, no goals apiece. But in saying that, it is TUS Dragons absolutely rifling that one into the opposition's net. I mean, just cross spectacularly right on the end of it and just pace to send that through. No one able to defend that. The setup on the defense wasn't exactly perfect. But hey, only 1 minute gone, first game of the season. You can't blame anyone for maybe being a little bit sloppy to begin with, but conceding the first goal of the day.
Yeah, and it was a good goal from the side of TUS. Maybe defenders on Queen's side of the pitch a little bit out of place, but still enough time in this game to bring it back and definitely possibly, take the lead if TUS were to make too many mistakes for themselves. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, looking at TUS here, they do seem to be controlling the possession a little bit more. That goal has also given them a little bit of confidence as the crosses are coming in. They are getting aggressive, but could they get caught in the counter-attack here? Foolish Feller follow it in. And he gets a decent cross in. The defense is there, though, and the clearance is going to come in from that. Mostly not fully, although in saying that now, the counter could potentially be on as it is now being taken up to the corner. 2 minutes gone, no extra goals, but the crosses from TUS are looking far more dangerous when they go forward and they have moments like that. That's a great clearance. But overall, I think TUS, when they're going forward, they're looking far more efficient, far more aggressive, and causing far more danger in moments.
Yeah, as you say that, a little bit of a double commit from TUS there on the attacking play. TUS definitely seem to be trying to pile on that pressure onto Leftovers, keep them towards their side of the pitch to stop a possible counterattack from happening. I just want to add in here that I've noticed Boehner's not on the field for the side of QUB Leftovers tonight. They are using their substitute, Mad Zombies, so my point earlier about Boehner being a player to watch out for, a little bit irrelevant in this game, but
what a
beautiful pass there.
That was,
I
love moments like that with the pass. But mind you, they're nearly getting caught in the counter here. That bounce favourable enough to maybe get it out, but holy moly, that was an interesting 15 seconds there for sure. Oh my god, what was that? What was that? I kind of need to have sort of a mental rewind and replay of that last 30 seconds of Rocket League, because we see an incredible pass that could have barely led to a goal. We seen no one being left back, so almost a counter-attacking goal coming from that, and then one that goes into the net that shouldn't really go in, but it goes in anyway.
Yeah, it seemed like QUB were just left. Again, I think surprised as you and I were in that encounter of. They were kind of out of place. They didn't quite read the ball as well as they needed to, but conceding a goal in the end of it. Again, astonished at that almost goal into a clearance to almost a goal again, and then TUS just cleaning up shop there at the end with that beautiful attempt on goal, which led to them taking the lead at 2-0 on QUB.
Well, I have to say, I mean, TUS 2-0 up now, QUB presenting very little danger, and one thing that has to be said, while that is a great shot and could go in if it's not clear, but terrific clearance off the line, sort of maybe defeating the point that I was about to say, but QUB for the most part are looking pretty disjointed here, and even you can see there is this offense now coming in from the side of TUS. QUB just... they haven't looked like they're going to offer up much, right? Which is really scary as that third goal goes in now in this game one is all but over for QUB. You have to worry if you're a fan of them, purely because even if it's a closely contended 2-0 or 1-0 that doesn't go their way, they still don't look like they're actually presenting any immediate danger in any moment. So the only time they've ever looked like scoring was at the beginning when I started my rant here, and then maybe like from a kickoff goal scenario. They've never applied any consistent pressure for even a period of 20 seconds where they looked like they were going to do damage, which I think is very damning look for the series.
Yeah, a bit like you're saying. They that being said, Foolish managing to score a goal, kind of get something for their side of their something for their team, at least for the time being. Still 2 goals down with 30 seconds left, so not sure if they're going to be able to bring that back up to get an overtime. But stranger things have happened in 30 seconds, and yeah, like you're saying, it seems that the QUB seem to be a little bit disjointed. They're not really playing as a team. They're not possibly communicating as much as they need to be with TUS appearing to be such a strong opponent today.
Yeah, I mean, TUS, as you just seen there, they put away another goal that, to be honest, in terms of what we've seen from QUB, I mean, this goal is leagues above the opposition, right? I mean, that was a really, really sweet goal in comparison to what QUB has offered. And I spent about 40 seconds to a minute ranting to offer a caster curse scenario for QUB, which it looked like they took advantage of by scoring that goal, but then instantly sort of falling back into routine here, it seems. it has to be said, while this game runs out to a close, another goal is going to go in to make it 5-1, which is surely the way it finishes. Unless QUB offer up some radical changes in the way that they are playing, this is looking like it's going to be an easy 3-0 day, because I'm looking at the side of QUB. I'm not even seeing any plays being implemented. I'm not seeing rotations being used to full effectiveness. I'm seeing no passages of plays. I'm seeing no sort of thought out clearances beyond just getting it out of the way and setting up for the next defense, which in of itself isn't being set up to what you could argue to be the necessary standard anyway. It's just not clicking for them, with the greatest respect, and maybe you just attribute that to being, you know, first game of the evening, again, the start of the new season. But one thing is for certain is one team has definitely come to this game slightly warmer than the other.
Yeah, I feel as though QUB seemed to be on the back foot from the get-go. They were on the defensive throughout that entire game and never really, you know, when they had those opportunities present themselves, never really were able to take full advantage because TUS's defense was that little bit stronger compared to their own. And it's definitely going to be a case of, if QUB want to stay in this competition for the time being in this series, they'd be wanting to try and kind of tighten those bridges a little bit and get into those positions they need to be, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, exactly. And in this game too now, they kind of need to start as they mean to go on. Hopefully, for themselves at least, they'll be able to get this change up slightly as we take a little bit look at the free cam and see how these players are moving out. Got a little bit of got a little bit dizzy there from the spin, but we're back into it as, you know, QUB, they're trying to do something already starting off a little better here, as they're at least just keeping the ball in these danger zones for more than 5 seconds at a time and being consistent. But now you've been left in a situation where the rotations very nearly let themselves down again for QUB, because that is one thing that if you're not clicking, as soon as you decide to go up a little more on that offense, if you're not clicking, those rotations aren't there and you're going to get incredibly punished on that defense. But they luckily held out there, and hopefully we'll be able to take that into account as they now will try to push forward. I mean, one thing that I think is fair to say, other than a few passages of play that we've seen from this series, we haven't been seeing fluid Rocket League at all. I mean, great goal for QUB, but back to the point that I was making, it's that neither team is in what maybe you would call a flow state at the moment.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It seems like they're going for their individual moments on QUB's side of things. We've seen a little bit of teamwork from TUS in a couple of goals in the last game, but QUB are going for those individual moments. They're all trying to score goals, but not necessarily working together to get them for themselves and take that lead by the horns. They really need to, if they're wanting to take a game from TUS, they're going to be wanting to really work that teamwork plays into their moving, into their attacking force to try and keep themselves in the lead. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to hold on to the lead as long as they'd actually like to, and TUS are just going to be able to rip apart their defense like we've seen them do with the 5 goals they scored in that first game. And it's going to be a clean sweep, 3-0 for TUS.
Lovely goal from TUS there, has to be said. Again, sort of a relatively simple one, right? Getting that ball propped up into a nice position, someone getting up on the cross, and the crosses have been very pinpoint for TUS. I think it's been a large quality for them in this series. But, you know, looking at QUB, when they go forward, they actually are presenting like quite a bit of danger, in the sense that, you know, they're now consistently keeping the ball peppered towards goal at least, right? And it's not being cleared that well. It's being, as we've seen here, propped up once again back into positions of danger where they get to go again. The clearances from TUS have left quite a bit to be desired, and that is something QUB definitely have an opportunity to capitalize on here as they go forward in search of the second wide in that instance, but again can get a cross back in, and they're getting there. QUB, it has to be said, 1-0, they are getting there in terms of how they need to play this series. But TUS, again, going back to what we began the point with, as soon as they go on that offense, as soon as they get in a position to get those crosses in, that's where you really see them shine. Oh, well, speaking of crosses, my God.
Yeah, it just seemed to click in that moment for Queens there just managing to get that cross in over to LC, who will take the shot and score a beautiful goal for themselves and just put them back in the lead for the time being. They're going to be wanting to score another here, going for the shot in off the crossbar. LC managing to clinch another goal for their team, giving them a little bit of a cushion, but definitely going to be wanting to go for more goals, especially after the display from TUS in the first game.
Yeah, TUS, they've kind of fallen asleep here in the last 30 seconds to a minute. That we have not seen from them what we have seen throughout the course of this series, and you have to give credit to QUB for being able to capitalize on that. They're getting into these positions, they're getting aggressive, and again, everything that they are hitting for the most part is, if not on target, it's very, very close, and always rebounding into an area where they can present themselves as a threat and as a danger again. Kind of going back to TUS's ability to clear, you know, in at least into the non-danger areas. Like, they get a good clearance there, but again, it's very central. It's not going to a corner. It's not setting up a counter attack. The defenses for these teams has been very much a case of just pinning each other back.
It seems a little bit that the defenses are a case of clear the ball and then deal with it later, rather than clear the ball to where a teammate should be or is, and that way they can make full advantage of the presenting counterattack. But definitely QUB are managing to really secure the play down in the midfield after TUS's clearances, because they're able to, they seem to have tightened up their rotation gameplay that little bit more as TUS has kind of become a little bit complacent in their playstyle. They've slowed down a little bit, and they really just need to, you know, get back into that speed that they were going in the first game.
Absolutely, but I do believe we've had a little bit of a change in the graphics there, if I'm not going crazy. It is TUS now that is on the left, and my big question is now, it's making me question everything. Were we watching the right teams in the first game? I'm not sure, but I'm sure we will find out pronto. But regardless, the team on the left seems to be TUS Dragons, and we just got the word that they did switch sides for some reason, so meaning that it is actually TUS who are in the lead, about to go 2-0 up in the series. And, you know, still what I have to say on that, as this one draws to a close, is that both of these teams presented themselves as far more even than I thought they would, like purely based off the game one, far more even than I thought they were from the game one, right? Which I think is a massive credit to the side of QUB, right? Because we were watching that, and maybe you knew, I didn't. Maybe I'm the one that hasn't kept a keen eye here, but I couldn't tell that there was a huge difference between them in that game. That's what threw me then so much about the change.
Yeah, I think they were definitely a lot closer in that game as far as, you know, play styles. TUS obviously, before the we thought was QUB had upped their game that little bit more after game one, but definitely a lot closer, a lot less goals being scored in that game, and definitely seems like QUB are kind of getting into the rhythm that they need to be to take a game off of TUS.
Absolutely, and now moving on to game number 3. Fingers crossed the sides continue to be right this time, or actually they are getting changed, so they're not. The teams deciding to opt for the classic switching between Team A and Team B in these games. You love to see it. It's something you very much see in Call of Duty more than Rocket League, but alas, here we are. It's 30 seconds deep. The defense coming in for TUS, a pretty nice clearance, and the pace of this game has ramped up compared to what we've seen throughout the course of this series. Both of these teams getting aggressive on each other, as QUB trying to take that one up quickly. The cross not quite there, and a pretty decent clearance now is going to send TUS up the pitch. This has been frantic and nearly scored there. Great defense. The TUS going to continue to try and bombard this goal, but in saying that, is that clearance going to work out? Not really. Back into the corner. Yeah, I think you have to say it. This has been frantic in comparison to the rest of the series.
I think you really got it there. The speed at which both teams are playing has really ramped up. It's almost as if they've both gotten comfortable against their opponents now and are really just going for goals. That there. Mad Zombie scoring for QUB, opening up the game at 3 minutes and 45 seconds left on the clock. Not the cleanest of goals, but definitely will be happy with taking the lead for the time being. Now they just need to lock down their defense, and when those opportunities present themselves again to score more goals, they're going to be going for it because they want to extend that lead. They want to get that cushion for themselves and take a game from TUS to keep themselves in this series now that TUS is 2 up on games in this best of 5.
Yeah, TUS very much in a position to get it done and dusted here, so the fight from QUB has to be now. And what has been interesting as well about the pace of this game, it's kind of been hard to say, you know, who's been bringing that pace, like what team is the reason why it's gone up, right? Because QUB have been taking the advantage of that pace. So are they just saying, like, listen, TUS, we're bringing it to you, we're going to make this one faster because you've been slowing down and we're going to catch you off guard? Or is it a little bit of TUS maybe getting a bit complacent, thinking that they have this series in the bag, thinking that they can play this one a little faster without as much coercion or cohesion between them? Coercion, not the right word. We'll go with cohesion between them. Interesting to say, it's hard to say, but nearly halfway through the game, TUS have equalized it. And it has to be said that they have had a period there of pretty consistent offense. QUB, in the last 30 seconds, we're once again seeing them in that position where they're sort of struggling to get out of their own half.
Yeah, it seemed to be that goal off the crossbar from one player, not quite getting it on target, but somebody there to really just take full advantage of the defense not really being in that position. We saw a defender trying to get back to where he needed to be, but couldn't quite get there in time. So it seems like TUS have really just... they've taken that goal that QUB had over them to heart and really just tried to go for that goal, breaking down that defenses from QUB's side and really just taking full advantage of knowing that defenders are out of position. Again, looking like 2 people went for that ball, but like not quite getting the touch they needed, and Zombies kind of coming out of the goal. Maybe should have stayed a little bit back to knock that out of the goal line.
Yeah, ultimately, it was sort of a well-worked goal, kind of just letting that one bounce in. Again, as soon as you're sending a ball anywhere into that danger zone, you're always going to be forcing a player to act, and you can sometimes count on them to make a mistake. And saying there that the goal line clearance didn't come in, and now just under 2 minutes left, TUS once again have the lead, and QUB capitalized at the beginning of the game on the pace, but now TUS very much seems to have adjusted to how this game is playing, and now have the lead to show that. And you'd have to say, if TUS managed to get one more, it's all said and done here, because QUB, in terms of what I think, like, non-overtime, I think they've only got about one more goal in them here.
Yeah, it's looking like from the get-go, QUB have kind of been on the back foot. TUS have been very strong in their attacks. They've been unrelenting when they get the ball towards QUB's side of the pitch. They just keep going, they keep taking shots, and eventually waiting for a defender to make that slip up, to make that mistake. That being said, QUB have had those moments where they've made a goal, they've managed to kind of squeeze by the defense of TUS, but it just hasn't been enough. And it comes back to that idea that we talk a lot about here, which is creating those opportunities rather than taking advantage of them. And it seems that TUS has managed to create more opportunities for goal scoring than QUB has. They've really just taken advantage of those opportunities when they presented themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it could be put better than that, because, I mean, throughout the course of this series, you can probably count on one hand the amount of opportunities QUB have created for themselves versus the ones that they have taken, whereas shooting the other foot, TUS Dragons, you probably have that same amount per game. And each time they've gone forward, they've been making the crosses for themselves. They've been playing it in the right way. Like, one thing you have to give QUB credit for is that they haven't really been leaving themselves in positions where they were gifting opportunities to TUS. They just weren't doing enough to stop TUS from creating their own opportunities, which I think, combining that with the fact that QUB struggled, as you said, to make their own opportunities, the combination of those factors ultimately leads to their downfall, and on the day, a pretty convincing series win for TUS.
It seemed to me like QUB were playing pretty well in the midfield area. Whenever TUS was able to clear the ball, they were able to intercept that and try and bring it back towards TUS's side of the pitch. It was just their defense. They seemed a little bit out of position, a little bit panicked at times. And they never really left an open goal for TUS to score. It was just that almost panic moment of somebody has to get the ball out of the way.
Yeah, it was always just kind of getting the ball out of the way, kind of dealing with the immediate, not thinking about how you can take that in your stride with the play. And look, maybe that was just the level that we were looking at today on the day, right? I mean, there was, across both teams, there was no real sense of flow when it came to the rotations of the example and the idea of taking the ball from A to B pretty quickly, knowing where players were going to be. Again, TUS, the only team that sort of showed any real idea of passing, you know, being completely aware of where someone else should be in their position and actually being able to get the ball to them. And you even then look at the pacing of the passes and the crosses, that it wasn't the highest quality that you will see. The reason why it worked maybe more so down to QUB's inefficiency with dealing with it rather than the passing just being of a level. It was always on target, it was always clinical, but the pacing of the passing wasn't quite there. And that's something that I think on the overall left the game feeling pretty weird up until game 3, is that there was a real pacing issue. It was quite slow. It was quite almost, what would you say, monotonous at times in the way that it was played. It was just scrappy. It was scrappy. No team was able to really take hold of the game, except arguably TUS in that game 1. And when we finally got a bit of pace injected into the game in that game 3 and QUB were able to take advantage early, TUS were just able to adjust quickly and sort of go back to what they were doing at their best, and overall just get a win for them, where I feel like they're coming away from that one thinking they haven't really broken much of a sweat.
Yeah, I think you touched upon it very lightly there. It seems that maybe both teams weren't playing at their peak today, and maybe that's a combination of, you know, being on stream, or it's or it's the first round of this season, so maybe players aren't as warmed up. They didn't have as much time to practice in between, you know, a week ago and today. So definitely would be interesting to see as the series goes on, as the season goes on, if a matchup between these two teams were to take place again, how would they fare?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do think that is a great point. And I think if you were to place these teams against each other in the final game of the season versus what you've seen here today in the first game of the season, you would see two completely different teams. Or at least you'd hope so, because at the level that they've currently operated today, I don't think either one of those teams will be able to go very far unless things progress to that next level, right? Because the only argument you could make is maybe for the side of TUS and saying that they recognized early on the level of which they had to play to get the job done tonight, and kind of were happy to concede to, instead of playing to their very highest ability. And I think that maybe is a little bit of a stretch. I just think ultimately you just have to give them congratulations. They won the game. They beat QUB. If, you know, commiserations to QUB, who again showed moments. But I really think for both of these teams, this game is just a perfect opportunity to turn around and say, right, back to the drawing board. This is a learning opportunity to see where we're starting from and comparing it to where we can go throughout this season.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to put it. This is the baseline. Let's see how far we can get from here. We're going to cut to a short break, but first I would like to thank some of our amazing sponsors that help make what we do here at Irish Esports Collegiate Series possible. So a big shout out to Reraw, Dogpatch Labs, and KOKA for sponsoring us.
Say yes to a summer holiday in France and getting there with Stena Line. Early bookers get the best choice.
Sail with Royal Caribbean and set your sights on a Europe adventure for the ages.
Welcome back to Irish Esports Collegiate Spring Series. We have a great matchup for you today. In this second series, we are going to be watching Setu Esports, who is a Tomster, Shallow, and Panda, versus TCD, who is Nuss, Freeze, and Waffle, I believe. And a beautiful goal there from, I think that's Nuss from the get-go. Very quick off the bat, so definitely going to be a very goal-heavy series of games here.
Yeah, I mean, already we're seeing it off the rip. The pace is 90 miles an hour compared to the previous game that we saw on broadcast today. And hopefully, you would think between these two teams, as you're right, it could be sort of like a goals galore scenario here. You know, the only 30 seconds gone, one goal gone already. The danger presenting itself for a second, but it does get cleared. Waffle, of course, trying to keep control of it in the halfway line, but Shallow in with the follow-up. And yeah, TCD have had a great start to this one. Seto going to be looking to counteract and trying to send this one up here, going into the corner for the cross, but it's not to be. Panda, though, could get the cross in. Nice little extra touch as well for Tomster, who's going to try and get this one to drop down from Shallow. And I mean, the passing really is there between the side already. I mean, they are just they're on another level, I think, even collectively, these teams, compared to what we've seen so far tonight.
Yeah, these teams definitely some of the better players in the league of Irish Esports Collegiate Series. We know what they're capable of. You know, the likes of Tomster, Shallow, Panda, they're all very technical players. They're very fast on their rotations and in their passing as well. TCD, we've got Waffle and Nuss and Freeze. Again, very, very fast gameplay. So, like, I think I might have been too quick off the bat there of saying it's going to be a goal-heavy game. It's either going to be goals galore or a stalemate, because both of these teams are so quick on their rotation. You know, even if one team has that counter-attacking opportunity, the other is going to almost always be back towards their own net to stop that going in, as Tomster knocks that just clear of their own goal line for Setu Esports.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right. The back and forth, the intensity, the pace of the game could indeed lead to a situation of a stalemate if the rotations are on point, but I just suppose it all comes down to if these rotations are favouring sort of more of an offensive or a defensive setup. For now, TCD still have the lead with half of this game 1 done. Set 2, though, have not looked like slouches by any means, have shown that they will be able to get themselves back into this one. And we've seen a couple of good shots, especially from the side of TCD, which had been saved by the side of Set 2. So definitely locking up the defense on both ends, nearly sending one in, but off almost the inside of the post and out, about as close as you can get, but trying to cross it straight back in. Will the rotation come in? No, a lapse in concentration in the back. And against the run of play and from some, what you'd say, not poor, but we'll say less than good rotational skills in that moment, has led to a second now being conceded for Set 2. And one that I think, again, on the overall, if there was any goal that was to be scored against them, it didn't deserve to be one like that, but alas, here we are.
Yeah, it seemed to me that Set 2 were just pushed up that little bit further, and Panda was very quickly trying to get to that ball, but just didn't have the boost, didn't have the speed that they needed to really get back and stop that from going in. An open net for TCD almost, and again, another goal, a 3-goal lead for TCD now. And Set 2 are yet to come up with a response. Not playing badly, I'll say, but definitely just not able to get to the ball that much quick enough to stop some of the goals going in. They've definitely had some amazing saves, like you said.
Well, one thing that has to be said is that the defense has been a bit more scrappy from the side of Set 2. I mean, for the most part, when it was 1-0 and they were, still in this game 1, the defense was there, but it was very much holding on. It was stretching for saves. It was just about stopping that counter-attack from coming through. But TCD's defense, even though they've been having to defend a little more, arguably, due to sort of the consistent possession of Set 2, it's been very controlled. It's been very methodical. There's always been at least 2 in the goal line. They've been picking up the right positions constantly, and then when it comes time to getting it clear, they've been able to put it in positions like they are right now, to where they can sort of stretch the opposition and organize a pretty decent counter-attack of their own. So I think in terms of doing what you need to in the back and then making sure to take it forward in the correct way, TCD have been far better at that. Set 2 have just been playing a game almost from the break of having to try and break through TCD, and because of that, leaving themselves exposed in the back.
Yeah, I think you've definitely hit it on the head there. It seems like TCD have managed to get those clearances. That being said, a beautiful goal from Tomster there. The pass kind of was going into the box, but knocked out of the way, and Tomster, seeing the clearance in the defense there, seeing that there was nobody in a position to stop that from going in, slotting it past 2 defenders on the back line there. Beautiful goal from Tomster. But yeah, like you were saying, it seems that the TCD have really taken full advantage of creating those clearance opportunities to move to the counter-attack, and Set 2 just haven't quite been there on the defensive line, slightly out of position, not quite having the space or the time to get back, and really going for those sweeping goals in the nick of time rather than anything else.
I'll tell you what, Set 2 have created a couple of opportunities for themselves, though, in the last 30 seconds. I mean, just as we went off kickoff as well, they were so close to scoring, but now scoring a really good shot. TCD have falling asleep at the wheel here, as the rotations, everything that we've been praising them for in the defense, has gone completely out of the window here. And because of that, Set 2 have been capitalizing. Again, a team that has spent more time on the offense. So if you're TCD and you take that foot off the gas pedal, you're leaving yourself in a position to be so exposed. Last play of the game here, going to try and take it to an overtime. The defense comes in, but Set 2, at the end of that game, smelled blood. They've realized they can take a goal against this opposition, and what looked like a game where TCD could have, in a sense, sort of drained the confidence of their opposition. Now they're going into a game 2 dead even. If anything, the momentum isn't on the side of TCD.
Yeah, it seems that on the defense side of TCD, they wanted the ball to hit the ground to finish that game out. They know how close Set 2 were to scoring a goal that would bring it into an overtime. And knowing Set 2 as such a strong opponent, they're definitely glad that they've taken at least one game from them, giving themselves that little bit of a forward momentum in this best of 5. But they know that Set 2 are such a strong competitor. They're going to have to be at the top of their game to keep them from scoring more goals. As we see a double commit from TCD side on that defensive maneuver, not quite panning out how they planned, but Waffle there to stop that, knock it to the crossbar, stop it from going in. Freeze able to pick up the ball, but getting demoed by Shallow, passing it towards Panda, was going towards TCD's goal, but cleared out of danger for the time being. It seems like there's a lot of play going on in the midfield.
Yeah, for sure. Very much at the start of this game too, these teams feeling each other out in the midfield, trying to figure out how they want to take it forward. And seeing here now TCD just trying to get it cleared and get it up the pitch. Again, one thing that they will take from that game one is that they'd like to be able to get a little bit more forward themselves. Even though they did score goals, they were very much counter-attacking goals that came from being able to play fast-paced. If they can sort of nail down a bit more of a consistent offense, then they can be a really dangerous side in this series. As a cross does come in, that is dangerous, but off the crossbar, not really there for Waffle. Now the counter-attack coming in from Setu, played well, but also dealt with well. Now the cross coming in, the opportunity for a shot sent right into that bottom corner. No one was going to be able to get to that. I'm not actually quite too sure who was on the goal line. It was Waffle who just got caught off guard. I mean, what placement there to send it to the wrong side of Waffle. And Setu worked that goal really well, and it has to be said, when Setu get a cross in, they can do a lot of damage from the shot. They have been pinpoint accurate.
Yeah, Setu definitely have that skill level to, once they get into those attacking positions, they can really drive home and really put that pressure onto their opponent's defense. And they keep that pressure on. So for TCD, they're going to be really wanting to get those clearances, get the ball away from their own goal line, and potentially get a first man into that upfront position to create those opportunities, to kind of bring back Setu's defense on their own goal line, and really just wanting to keep it away from their own side of the pitch.
I have to say, we're seeing some great defense here from TCD. A couple of clearances practically off the goal line, which means they'll now be able to set themselves forward as Panda is there to send that ball up high, slow down this play. Exactly what needed to be done in that moment, as Nuss just rotating out of it, and Panda going to go forward now, send the pass, and Setu have gotten warm. Tobster with the finish, and what a finish at that. Nearly halfway into the game, an immaculate pass from Panda, linked up beautifully from Tomster, almost passes himself off the backboard and flicked that right down in there. I mean, that's one of the better goals I think you're going to see all day.
Yeah, there was a nice double touch from Tomster off the back wall, back to himself, and then almost just driving that goal home on the goal line. And, you know, really credit to him. That was a beautiful finish. Shallow going to go for a goal, but Waffle able to pinch that off the post and back out towards the midfield, but the danger isn't fully cleared just yet. Seems like Shallow is trying to pinpoint a weak point in TCD's defenses to increase their lead that little bit more. Back into the midfield, open net pretty much, but Nuss is able to stop the danger in the nick of time, get that clearance they needed to stop them from conceding yet another goal.
Setu Esports have been comfortably the better team in this game, right? More so than TCD was in that game one for the first half of that game. TCD, again, been a side that I think very much, you know, while they were 3-0 up in that game one, they were relying on moments and opportunities presenting themselves, versus Setu, who've really stepped it up a gear in this game in terms of creating their own opportunities, just controlling the ball, as you see there, not afraid of rotating it back. They are just in complete control of this game. They have bringing the flow now. The pace is being set by them, and TCD are chasing. But we have also seen that when they've had those moments, they are able to take them. They are able to sneak a goal in like they nearly did there. So if you're the side of Setu, you just need to keep scoring, or you need to absolutely wrap up that defense. But I would go for the offense as the best type of defense mentality when playing against a side like TCD, as they once again go forward, just under a minute left, 2 goals ahead. Not much time for TCD to pull this one back. Very much looking like this series is going to go all even.
Yeah, definitely Setu are going to be a little bit worried because of how strong TCD have been when they've gotten into those moments, those flow states of scoring goals in that game one. But TCD's defense is, I think, where they really shine. Yes, they have let in 2 goals in this game, but they really are able to lock it down for the better part of the attacking force of Setu. And like I said, when Setu are in those positions, they are unrelenting on their opponent's defense. They just keep trying and trying and trying and going for goals. Panda knocking it in off of, that was between the post and a defender there. Didn't quite get to see who it was, but yeah, Waffle not quite being able to get into position to stop that going in. Again, it goes back to that, what we were saying at the start of the game. At the start of game one, these teams are just so fast in their play.
Yeah, I mean, it's been truly a top-tier performance here from Setu. I think for the side of TCD, even though it is only going to be one apiece as this game number 2 draws to a close, for the side of TCD, I think you should be very, very worried about where this series is going, because, I mean, you could argue that not just for the last 5 minutes of gameplay, but for the last 6 or 7 minutes of gameplay in total, it has been all Setu in regards to who's had control, who's been passing the ball better, who's been bearing down on the net. I mean, you could argue even in that game 1 for the most part that Setu were the better on offense. They just weren't able to make it count. And again, that goes back to the quality, which you said that we have to attribute to TCD and the way that they play defensively. But kinks have shown, there are cracks in the armor. That wall is crumbling that TCD has formed, and Setu have been there to take more than full advantage of it. So if you're the side of TCD, it's one apiece. You're going into this game, crucial pivot moment. You want to start locking down the offense. You've proven that you can work defensively, but you will eventually be broken. You need to start taking this ball forward. You need to start keeping it in the corner and taking full advantage of every opportunity that presents itself, as they have been doing for the most part, but then actually create some opportunities for yourself and start to essentially do exactly what Setu's doing to yourselves on that offense.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of putting it, is that the TCD have a great defense. Setu are able to kind of find those weak points to score those goals, but TCD really need to just take a page out of Setu's book in their attacking play. They need to really just go for gold when they're up in those positions, put that pressure on Setu's defense, because that's when the defense shows its weak points. That's where you see the cracks in the armor, is when you're piling on that pressure, which Setu knows all too well. They know how to do it to other teams, that's kind of part of what makes them such good players and work so well as a team.
Absolutely, and with just over a minute gone here, it is still 0-0. Neither one of these teams wanting to give away what would be a crucial goal, you feel, in this game 3, because I also feel like these teams may start to improve on the defense. As great as the defenses have been, they're going to want to keep these games lower scoring due to the pressure, and TCD scoring an immensely important goal for them as Waffle just gets into the right position, sends that one through again. It got a little bit chaotic. The ball just got propped up into the right position, but he had to be on the end of it, and he had to keep that shot down, which he absolutely did. Huge goal for TCD. And I did say about these games now starting maybe get a little more lower scoring, but I think if you're the side of TCD, now that you've gotten that one, you might want to try and make sure you go through and get the second, or at the very least keep that ball in the opposite end of the pitch and not have to be relying so much on defending right from your back line.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be wanting to get that little bit of wiggle room in the scoreline, keep Setu from scoring on them, but opening up the opportunities to score again themselves, and give themselves that little bit of cushion. So it's not a case of if Setu score, they're back to 1-1, they're back to tied game, and potentially if it goes to that point, an OT on the cards, because we all know that OT is stressful in these situations when you're competing at such a high level.
Absolutely, and overtime at this stage of both of these teams would be full of pressure and very draining, right? Because again, you've one more game at least to go after this one. If this one goes to an overtime, it'll be a real momentum drainer, I think, for both teams, but especially the team that loses. If you're looking to play the regain, losing for 1-1 overtime is not the way you want to go, but Panda hoping at the very least to take it to an overtime, if not be able to come away with the win for a side, as he's on the end of that one. Again, for all the credit we give TCD for their defense, not their strongest defensive moment. One thing they've always shown throughout the course of this series is that they've nearly always had someone on that goal line whenever any danger has presented itself, but they had no one there. And again, we've talked about Setu, how they can just capitalize on those opportunities. As soon as one presented itself, as soon as that net looked any way open, they made sure to send that one home.
Yeah, it seemed like a sending the ball off the ceiling there to their own teammate was the best course of action. They saw that opening and just really took full advantage of it. And again, goes back to that idea of really, really solid teamwork. It's not about those individual moments. It's about passing to your teammate who's in a better position than you to score a goal and bring you that win that you're all vying for overall. Yes, it is nice to have those glory moments where you score an absolute screecher. You could get a psycho, and your teammates will love you for 30 seconds, but then it's back into the game, and what you're looking for is that overall win at the end of the day.
Absolutely, it is the win that counts. And now just over a minute left in this game, 1 apiece. The tensions are as high as they've ever been in this series between TCD and Setu in game 2 of the games that we have seen here tonight on the Irish Collegiate. And now it is TCD that are trying to go back at this offense, but being dealt with quite well by Setu, who are going to try and get up on the counter attack, but NUS in there to deal with it. But Panda going to continue sending it forward. Great pass, or potentially shot. I'm sure he'd have claimed either one of those, whether it was a pass or a shot, depending on how it fell. But they're actually getting to go forward again here, Setu, and they're now starting to ping this ball around with some pace. They're the ones looking more aggressive. Terrific touch by Panda to send it in the top left. And what a finish. Recognizing it, NUS coming across and just stayed still. And did NUS actually bump into Waffle? I'm not sure there from that angle. But regardless, that finish was cool. It was calm, and it's given the Setu the lead at a crucial moment.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful goal from the part of Setu. It seemed that they just caught the defense off guard a little bit, and they were almost getting in their head with that psychological move. It almost looked like Waffle was trying to go for the low ball, NUS was trying to go for the high ball, and it seemed like, Setu managed to pick that right angle to hit it right in between the two defenders there. And a beautiful goal, I will say. 2-1, 5 seconds. The countdown is on. Don't let the ball touch the ground for TCD. They are wanting to be keeping it up to try and score another goal, to try and stop Setu from getting this 2-game lead. That being said, it hasn't worked out in their favor. Panda coming up just ahead of Freeze, knocking that in, and NUS knocking the ball in over the line. 3-1 to Setu.
Massive credit to NUS. He saw Panda went through all the effort of trying to take that shot. He thought, well, this is probably going to drop halfway on the line. I'll get the job done for you. I'll send this one through. It's 3-1. Well done to you. And now Setu Esports 1 game away from coming away with this series as they go 2-1 up. And there's multiple ways that you could frame the way that game 3 played. You could say that TCD finally evened things up with how they were playing against Setu. They managed to get a goal. They made the game a little bit more scrappy, looked more dangerous, but Setu came out on top. Or you could argue that against the run of play, against Setu being consistently on the back foot of an offense, they managed to just sneak through a goal, and ultimately from there weren't able to do much more from that. So you can frame this on either side. If you're a TCD fan, you can see the positives. If you're a Setu fan, you can see the positives and see that goal conceded just as a blip. But of course, you're the side of TCD. You want to come away with this series, you want to send us to a game 5. You got to be reading the positives of that situation, and you've got to believe that you can take it to your opposition, because one thing is for certain, is Setu are fully showing the belief here that they can come away with this series in what I'm sure will be a massive win for them. Well, a massive win for both teams at this stage, but a repeat of what we've seen in that previous game, TCD coming through with the early first goal.
Yeah, opening up the score line, definitely going to put a little bit of wind in their sails. It's Setu are this dominating force, and they're just showing that they can draw blood yet again. They're showing Setu that they can pinpoint their weaknesses and take full advantage of when they show themselves. That being said, it looks like Setu are going to be quick on the counter here, trying to score themselves a goal to even this game out with only a minute gone. But TCD are there to try and clear it, but Tomster in there, able to read that pass, take control of the ball in that midfield. Nuss going to try and bring it back down towards Setu's goal line, but nothing comes of it just yet. There is a little bit of danger for Setu, but they are able to clear it easily. Not going to bother them that much. Freeze trying to bring the ball up with 0 boost. Going to be trying to get his teammates into a better position for another goal scoring opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, this game, the way that it's played out, it's gotten really scrappy here between these two teams. I mean, they've both done so much in terms of reading each other, in terms of figuring out how they're playing and sort of altering the gameplays. I mean, there's a lot of standoff moments you're seeing between players where they're almost like baiting each other into the ball. Who's going to strike first? Who's going to get to it first in the air? Whether or not they fake it, let it fall down. You know, the plays are getting a little bit more elaborate in regards to who's getting into whose head, but for the moment all that matters for the side of TCD is that they are a goal ahead. I'm going to have to try and keep it that way, maybe even double it up there if they had an opportunity to do so. But now Set2 going on the offense, and the danger for TCD will be that whenever Set2 have managed to get a somewhat consistent offense, they've been able to get a goal from that. If they keep that ball up in the opposition half for more than 30 seconds, more often than not, they usually reap the rewards from that. So TCD, they need to keep the defense on lock, but they need to make sure to be getting this ball out quick and to be playing the majority of the game in the opposition half, which they're definitely having a better job of doing so in this one in comparison to the last game. However, we also did see Setu grow into the game throughout the last game, so do not want a repeat of that in this final one.
Yeah, TCD are definitely going to be wanting to get that extra cushion of a 2-0 scoreline to bring this into a game 5, but definitely looking like Setu are making it difficult for them towards their own backline. I will say that TCD have had a lot of opportunities here, and it just seems that Setu's defensive play has really tightened up in the last couple of minutes. You know, we saw a couple games there where they weren't as confident on the defense. They were trying to go for those almost last minute saves, but they've really tightened it up now. And it's just a case of TCD have been very aggressive on their attack. They've been really trying to put that pressure onto Setu.
That was a massive touch there from Waffle. That was so close to going through, and now Setu with a great pass as well. The Tomster nearly sneaks through. Terrific save from Waffle, though. Panda up for the slam dunk, taken off the line. And now Shallow going to try and put that one back in, but Waffle is there for the clearance. Tomster, though, going to try and send it back in, but pinged right back from Nuss, and Setu now with just under a minute to make as many opportunities as they can and hopefully take for them at least one to send it to an overtime. But TCD are looking dangerous on the offense and coming through with the goal to almost guarantee us going to a game number 5 in what has been such an entertaining series to watch so far.
Yeah, it's been very entertaining. It's been very fast-paced. Both defenses have been so tight. Both sides of the field, their attacking play has just been so aggressive, really battering down their opponents at every possible opportunity. A game 5, it could be on the cards unless Setu can get themselves 2 goals in quick succession to bring it to an OT and close out this game, but it's not looking likely at the moment. Looking like game 5 will be on the cards. TCD are not letting anything through on their backline at the moment.
Yeah, TCD would have to be crazy to score here or concede here and then concede essentially a kickoff goal, but even at that, there's going to be no time for that. 5 seconds left. That ball is firmly in the middle of the park. Setu maybe going to be able to at least get 1 after the clock is gone. Shallow making it 2-1, but a consolation goal as that timer has indeed run down, and we will be going to a game 5. And I have to say, I think this game 4 is the first game that I have seen in this series where I could confidently say TCD came across as the better team, right? Because again, in that game 1 that they won, it was a case of moments, taking advantage of moments. But TCD had a really strong defense and were actually able to be somewhat consistent on their offense as well, which I think was a huge difference maker. Set2 played a great defense, but they had to rely on their defense more and got exposed from time to time because of some good moments from TCD. So really is going to be a fascinating game 5 to watch, because if you were to count up the minutes throughout the entirety of this series as to who's been the better team for those minutes, I think Set2 comes out on top of that one. But TCD have proven now in time and again, considering in that game 1, they can win a game through moments, and they can also win a game by being consistently the better team. So going into this final game, it's just gotten underway. Who do you think is going to come out on top of this one? Don't take that goal into
you say
account.
that.
No, don't take that goal. No. Pretend that goal didn't happen and tell me.
It's really hard to say. I think, you know, we, like you said, game 1, TCD took the win, but it was a case of taking those opportunities when they presented themselves rather than creating them. But that game 4, it was very much using teamwork to create those opportunities and take the shots that they needed to take that 4th game off of Set2 and keep themselves in this series. That being said, Set2 are probably, you know, everybody's predicted winners of this game, because they have won Irish Collegiate a couple times in a row now. They definitely have the track record to take this game off of TCD. So it is kind of anyone's game at the moment. I think TCD have been playing very well defensively, and when they get that momentum going in their attacking play, have been able to capitalize on those positions, on those little glimpses of hope in the breaks of Set2's backline. But is it a case of Set2 are just going to drive it home now? They're going to go for those opportunities. They're going to unrelentingly break down TCD's defense to take this game 5.
I mean, it certainly is possible that is the way that it plays, but you also have to say as well, the clearances from TCD have been far better in this game 5 as well, because I mean, Set2 just had another great shot, but it was dealt with so well, not just by being there, but by actually getting it cleared into a position where Set2 have to completely restart again. But nearly with the chance here, Panda just ran out of boost, but Tomster in to even this one up, and Set2 have upped the aggression here, and TCD very much floundering at the back. But it has to be said, and maybe this is something that we've missed throughout the series, but I'm starting to notice Set2 start to play a bit of Dirty Rocket League now. There's bumps coming in, there's demolitions coming in on the line. They're just trying to disrupt the flow of TCD, and that does seem to be working, because again, it's just getting them these little opportunities to get ever so closer to goal. And now they're feeling confident once again in the offense. That's an immaculate goal line clearance by Nuss, who just about manages to pinch it the right way off the post. Set2 very much smelling blood here. The ball is in their court, literally metaphorically. Are they going to be able to come away with the win here, get a couple of more goals, or could we see a game 5 overtime?
Yeah, potentially a game 5 overtime, but yeah, both of these teams, they've been so strong today. They've played very well. There have been games where Set2's been definitely, you could say, has been the stronger team in this matchup. But then again, TCD has had games where they've definitely controlled the pace. They've controlled the flow of the ball throughout the entire game. I think if I was to kind of talk about TCD's highlights in that game 4, for the first couple of minutes, we saw they were very aggressive on their attack. They managed to pinpoint down the weak points of Set2's defense. And if they could just do that one last time, if Set2 were to give them the breathing room they need to do that again, I think Set2 could be in a lot of trouble for losing this series.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the case of now where just both of these teams have to lock in and can't afford to give an inch, as we've seen on both sides now. As soon as a team is a little bit lax in the defense, they are punished for it. They need to keep up appearances here as that one trickles across the goal line, but not through it. Setu certainly having the closer opportunities here to take the lead. 1.5 minutes left in this game. Tomster taking it through the air, but Waffle there to deal with it. And now potentially a counter-attacking opportunity just off the post. And Tomster dealing with it now. Shallow going to take it to the side of the halfway line. Go for a shot himself. Demolition's through. And Shallow with the goal. Setu go 2-1 up. And again, you talk about the plays coming in. Tomster there with the demolition. Dirty Rocket League being used in the final game of the series and being used to a treat, it has to be said. What a moment to pull out a demolition like that. Arguably just gifting the goal to the side of Setu.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about Setu playing a little bit of Dirty Rocket League. They've gone for more of those demos to take out that third man on the back line. They've gone for those bumps to really disrupt and create chaos when they can on the field. And I think just that moment there of TCD let their guard down that little bit more than they should have, and Setu finding that weak point and really going for gold and just putting so much power behind the ball.
Absolutely. Power behind the ball, potentially a nail in the coffin. We will soon see with 25 seconds left to go. Time trickling away for the side of TCD to pull this one back for an overtime in game 5. Setu nearly over the line, but Shallow looking to send this one over the line to make it 3-1 to Setu Esports. And if that last goal wasn't a nail in the coffin, that one was definitely the first couple of mounds of dirt on top of the coffin, ready to bury and seal this game through. Setu very much looking like they're going to take the win here at the death.
Yeah, looking very much like Setu are going to go 3-2 in terms of games in this series. It's been very close on the matchup until the last minute or so of this game. Setu scoring another goal for themselves with 5 seconds left on the clock. It's almost like they're trying to show to TCD, look, you've played well, but let's just finish this out now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing you have to say is that we got to give so much credit for the way TCD have played this one, because we know how strong this Setu roster is, right? And as a 5th goal goes in there, you know, don't let it fool you. This has been a close game and a close series, right? But TCD have made Setu look not like an average team, but just made them look like a good team. You know, TCD have come through into this one. They have kept Setu for the most part at bay. We've seen them in moments, but for 90% of the time, TCD were able to play in such a way where they were able to deal with Setu and not necessarily be dominant against them, but just make it look like it was two really good teams going up against each other, instead of, you know, TCD playing against a team who's won multiple times in the past and are arguably the top team out there. So for that alone, I think you have to give, you know, massive commiserations for TCD, who, as we'll say, ultimately put up a really great fight, but then give congratulations to Setu, because they did get the job done in the end up. Were they going at 100% of what they could? Maybe not, considering it's the first game of the season. But regardless, for them, were able to get the job done. And when you see them go into those brief flow states on the offense, it was a whole different ball game. I'm surprised TCD were able to deal with them in moments as well as they did.
Yeah, I think you've really just nailed it right there. Of Setu had those moments, and TCD were able to stop them defensively. They were able to kind of catch them in those moments where they looked like they were going to score goals, but the defense on TCD's side was just that little bit better than maybe Setu had expected going into this matchup. And I think, you know, congratulations to Setu for coming out with the win against a tough opponent like TCD has proved themselves to be today. Now, Zep, you put me on the spot at the start of this stream. I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Oh,
if
no.
you had to pick an MVP for today, who would it be?
Well, I mean, I think it definitely has to go to the side of Setu, and only for the fact that I was able to pick it out and it's something that I seen. So, you know, objectively might not have been the MVP, but I'm going to say that the MVP anyway. And sure, we know we're the casters here. Our word rules the land. Who's going to stop us from saying, I can say whoever I want here. The power's all mine, but I'm going to say Tomster. purely because of, or at least I believe it was Tomster that done this now. If it wasn't Tomster and it was someone else and I've messed that up, get rid of me here and never bring me back. But I believe it was Tomster that came in with the demolition towards the end where Setu were able to get that crucial goal, right? And what I really admire from really good Rocket League play is we know at the level that these guys play that they all can play, right? Everyone's able to get up in the air, they're able to air dribble, able to score fancy goals, able to pass to each other immaculately, keep the rotations on point. But being able to judge throughout a series the moments that you need to change the way the game is playing, as we said about playing dirty Rocket League, getting in there with those demolitions, the ability of Tomster to be able to be a nuisance to that back line and was ultimately the key that picked the lock of TCD, right? Because we were complimenting so much how strong their defense was and how it held up. Whoever made the play call, fair play to them, but it was Tomster that done the damage. He unlocked the defense. He got those key demolitions, which allowed Setu to get over the line and not potentially concede a late goal at a 1-1 or a 2-1 stage. That completely changed the makeup because, again, we have seen through game one of that series that TCD were able to do that. So MVP, I have to give to Tomster for being able to finally unlock that TCD defense.
Very beautifully put, Zep. And we are going to be finishing up here for this evening. But before we do, I would like to thank some of our other sponsors, again, who make what we do here at Ireland Esports Collegiate Series a possibility. So a big thank you to Logitech, GG Machines, and Play8 for sponsoring us and making what we do possible. And of course, we will be back again next Tuesday, the same time, to see another matchup of 2 games, best of 5. And of course, we will see you there.